Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. The Celtics, very deserving. Don't forget, they had a dominant record. They lost to Denver, but they had a dominant record against the West, even more dominant against the East, flushed through the Eastern Conference playoffs and the finals. So, there are these teams too that, we're so used to dynasties in the NBA. I was talking to Chris Broussard today. We were talking about teams that won a championship that weren't a dynasty, but they were great teams. And one of the first ones was the Jerry West, Gail Goodrich, Wilt Chamberlain. Remember that 33-game winning streak Laker team that I think beat the Knicks and won a championship. Now, they didn't reel off a lot of them, but in a singular season, that was an older Wilt. That's one of the greatest teams of all time. There was a 76ers team that had Moses Malone joined Julius Erving, and they were kind of missing a dominating interior scoring presence. And for a year or two, Jesus, I remember those Sixers well. Like Malone was, it's just hard to, Moses Malone, if you ever saw him play, nobody discusses him. He was as dominating a rebounder as I've ever seen in the history of basketball with Dr. J and good guard play. And I think Boston falls into that group. So right now, like we thought Denver was going to run off 2 or 3. Boston in a single season, like that West Goodrich Wilt team or the Moses Malone Dr. J team, for a season, lightning in a bottle, health, spectacular, just flush through the playoffs. The question will become, they will play with a champion swagger next year. They probably won't be as relentless in the regular season. This is, kind of predictable. They'll be, they'll have their little swoons and won't be, but I do think there's a chance it's a back-to-back championship because cross your fingers on Porzingis' health. They're bringing the guys back. You'll play with more confidence. Tatum comes into a season like, okay, I got it. I got my money. I got my title. I think it does take pressure. I think it was building. You and I said this. Celtics had to win this. After that Warriors final where they came home and kind of laid an egg emotionally, they had to play well in this series. I thought by second quarter, game 2, it was like, this is a mismatch. But I think next year you'll see this goes down to me as in moment in time, a great team in a great moment. Too good not to win a championship, but at times too weird to be a dynasty. I mean, Jaylen Brown wins the MVP and he averaged 20 a game. He didn't average 30. He didn't average 28. He averaged 20, 21 a game and was the MVP for the second straight series. So historically, can we acknowledge they're a little bit of an odd, great team? Like, yeah.
No, they're absolutely weird. I mean, like when we think about when we list the all-time great teams in NBA history, we think like 2017 Warriors, 2013 Heat, teams like the 2001 Lakers, the 1996 Bulls, right? The 1986 Celtics, like the 1987 Lakers. We think of these teams, and every single one of them is led by one of the 5 best players in NBA history. In my opinion, Steph Curry is the 5th best perimeter player that's played since 1980. Yeah. Like I think he's right up there with Bird and Magic in that tier. So like it's just funky to see a team that is as dominant as the Celtics have been. But I think one of the things too is this kind of stuff bears out in time. Like, you know what, Celtics fans, they're going to want a certain amount of like credit for being dominant. And like, here's the thing, like you beat the Cavs, the Heat without Jimmy Butler, the Pacers, and the Mavs. So like I'm not trying to but one of the things with NBA history, because like people said this about the Nuggets last year. Now I thought the Nuggets run was a little underrated because they went through LeBron and AD, and they went through KD and Devin Booker, and they went through Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Like I actually thought that Nuggets team played some tough opponents, but like everyone was like, oh, Denver had an easier path. Well, guess what happened this year? They had to play a really tough team in the second round. They lost. So like NBA history has a chance, has a kind of like a habit of working these sorts of things out. Like Next year, they're probably going to have to play a Milwaukee in a playoff series, or a healthy Knicks team, or a team like Denver out of the Western Conference, or maybe what if Oklahoma City makes some big trade this summer and they end up going to the finals, and it ends up being like NBA history has a kind of a habit of working these things out. Everything about how this team is remembered is going to be about the big picture. So, for instance, if they lose next year, you're going to zoom out on a 3-year window here, and you're going to be like, embarrassing loss against the Heat in the conference finals, beat 4 mediocre teams, then lost the following year. People will write the story of that Celtics team as an underachieving, overly talented team. But if they go out next year and they beat better teams on their way to the Larry O'Brien, people will zoom out and be like, this is an all-time great team. So like, that's the thing. Like, you're going to get another crack at the table next year. It's like Jayson Tatum said, got to do it again next year. Go ahead, do it, and it'll shut everybody up. Like, these things get worked out with wins.
I think a team to keep your eye on is the Knicks. I think one of the great things, if you're a Knicks fan, because they don't match up from an offensive perspective. They don't have that many guys who can catch it and shoot it and ball handle and pass. One of the things that's great about the Celtics winning, if you're a Knicks fan, it does force you some urgency. Like, guys, we can't make a tweak. We're not a tweak away from beating Boston. Like, we got to go out and get guys like Mikal Bridges and another score. Boston really puts pressure on Eastern teams. It's one thing if you're a Western team and you lose to Boston in the finals. You got to the finals, but you're not getting past Boston in New York with a tweak. You're just not. Even Miami, Bam and Butler. Butler will probably be banged up by the time, if he's in Miami Heat. They need another, not Tyler Hero. They need another player. So this is the good thing. If you're a Miami fan or a Knicks fan or a Sixers fan, this is like, guys, this wasn't competitive. Like this, how many blowouts? They had like 13 blowout wins. Mm-hmm. It's like tweaking is not beating. Nobody in the East has Jokic. Okay. You don't have Jokic. So tweaking's not going to do it. And I think that's sort of the advantages. I say this in sports all the time. The great thing about Harbaugh at Michigan for a Buckeye fan, it puts pressure on going and getting Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator. It's like they're pushing us around 3 years in a row. You want your rival to be viable because it puts pressure on your owner and your front office. And so I'm watching this game tonight and I'm thinking, if I'm a Knicks fan, you may hate Boston, but your front office, these are smart people now in New York running that franchise. You got to bring a Mikal Bridges on and another guy that can drop 20. DiVincenzo's become a great catch and shoot guy. Brunson's going to give you 28. Mikal Bridges could give you 24. And I've got to get somebody better than Mitchell Robinson in the post that can give me offense. So that's the upside for the Eastern Conference teams is I think Daryl Morey, the Knicks, Indiana, if they can get somebody, the pressure's on. You got to add multiple pieces over the next couple of years to beat these guys.
And aggression is going to be the key. Because again, like, how did Boston do this? They did this by trading for Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. Like, Brad Stevens just hit 2 massive home run. I went back and looked at that trade and saw that they ended up like netting 2 first-round picks in the Porzingis trade. And I'm like, oh man, like anybody could have had him. And then Boston went and got him. And then, like even looking at Denver, it's like they went and got KCP. They went and got Aaron Gordon. Like those are 2 like slam dunk moves to surround Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., and Nikola Jokic. That aggression is the big piece there. Even going back to 2021, they won after they traded for Drew Holiday. The Bucks did. They traded for Drew Holiday. They went and they won the title. And so like keep an eye on those aggressive teams this summer, the teams that add talent. There are a lot of young teams in the NBA right now that are like this close to becoming great. That Thunder team, that Orlando Magic team is probably like 2 years away, but they're going to be really, really good. You mentioned the Pacers. If they make maybe one more addition this offseason, they could be in the mix. The Knicks are obviously going to be aggressive. I mentioned Memphis earlier. Like Memphis, this kid Gigi Jackson that they have on the wing is awesome that they discovered this year. He like slots perfectly between John Morant, Desmond Bane. They're going to have Jaren Jackson coming back. They're going to have a big look. They're going to go get a center, and they're going to have a massive front line that could contend with Denver as long as John Morant can like stay healthy and available for his team. I think they could be really good. Like the league is just like this Celtics team is kind of settling right in this nice little opening here where all the older teams are kind of falling apart and all the younger teams are not quite there yet. And they're having a lot of success as a result.
Jason Timpf, Hoops Tonight, been a blast. NBA Finals, it's in the books. The Celtics, too good, as we said, to not win a finals. It was this year. Really, it's got a LeBron, Cavs, Duncan, Spurs feel to it, where you kind of knew early on, 4 or 5 of the top 6 players felt like they were all in Boston. They also, I wrote this down in my notes. When Boston in the third quarter, when they're playing collaborative basketball, it's beautiful. They are, it is like it's almost like they're playing, and when they're playing comfortably, and in this series it's loose. They are really like those Warrior teams, even with KD and Clay and Steph, guys that shoot a lot. They were pretty. That was really beautiful basketball. The Celtics had moments tonight, and in this series, you're like, that's how to play basketball. That's just drive, pitch, high IQ, everybody fits, no animosity. All starts with Tatum, who's sort of, he's the ultimate team guy. But Boston, a confident Boston looks like a champion. And they were never put in a position to question themselves in this series or in the playoffs. A confident Celtic team like tonight, this series, that looks like what an NBA champion does.
Yeah, they played a fun brand of basketball. I enjoyed watching them. Colin, this has been another fun postseason in the books. I'm sure we'll touch base at some point during free agency, but I always enjoy talking basketball with you during the finals. We're going to call it a night, guys. This NBA Finals Game 5 instant reaction was brought to you by Chase Freedom Unlimited. Unlimited 1.5% cash back is just the beginning. Cash back 3% on dining, including takeout, 3% at drugstores, 5% at Chase Travel, and 1.5% on everything else. How do you cash back? All right, everybody, we will be back tomorrow to get a little bit deeper into some of the NBA Finals storylines, and then we're turning our attention to the draft and free agency because the NBA calendar never ends. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting me and Colin and the volume as well as our channels that we've been trying to grow. We appreciate you guys.